Jim, why don't you give a little background on why we even care about family in the midst of youth ministry?
Well, it's interesting. Doug and I, actually, Doug was in 8th grade in my youth group. I know I look younger than him. But we also then worked together, and he was an intern. And sometimes we would say, as the parents would drop the kids off, and then they'd go to brunch or they'd go out on their date on Wednesday night, we'd say, it'd be better if we could help the parents of these kids, and then the kids could go away, and then we'd help the parents would help the kids. But that didn't happen. But more and more as we've gotten older, we think there's a fresh breeze of the Spirit that says, how do you help families succeed? Quite possibly it's by, even in youth ministry, giving them some good resources. At the same time, it's also living it out. And one of the things about Doug that I've seen, I don't mean to make him even, more of a hero than some would already think. I think he's one of the finest dads and finest husbands I know. Not that he's my husband or my dad, but, he did it right. And so for me, there's a fresh breeze of the Spirit. I just spoke on it, so I know some of you are in this. But I think there's a fresh breeze of the Spirit that's saying we've got to figure out how to partner with parents. And so we're going to stand up here and kind of talk about it, or sit right here.
Yeah. Well, Kathy and I are doing a marriage seminar later today, and one of the things that we're going to say as we start, and we have to remember that this is also filmed for YS later for going on the website, but one of the things that we're going to say marriage-wise is that your youth ministry is only as healthy as your marriage. And I think your youth ministry is only as healthy as your family. I think for those of you that are single, your youth ministry is only as healthy as you are healthy. Yeah. And so we have top-down leadership that we don't think it's all that important. As long as we have a healthy youth ministry, really we don't care that, not that we don't care that much about the family, but we kind of compartmentalize. We do with family what we blame kids doing for their faith. That they have a Sunday morning faith, and then they have a school faith, and then they have a sports faith, or not a faith, but just these components of their life. We do the same thing as leaders in ministry. We have our church world, and then we have our family world. And what we're fighting for is that the leader would put more priority and emphasis and importance on their family than they would the ministry. What's your priority thing that you talk about?
Yeah, for all of us, we'd all agree that it's God, our marriage, if we're married, then our kids, and then our vocation. But the problem is we get that mixed up with what I call confused priorities. So many times we get our vocation because it's sort of the God vocation mixed up with God. And for a lot of us, especially you in youth ministry, at a certain age, you're more child-focused than you are marriage-focused. And so a lot of youth ministry couples, I think, have, to be honest, some poor marriages because they put all of their energy into their job, or they put all of their energy, rest of their energy with their kids, and they're not putting any energy into their marriage. And frankly, one of the questions I've had to ask myself is, am I only giving my Kathy, he's married to a Kathy too, my emotional scraps? And if I'm putting all of my energy with my work and I'm putting all of my energy with my kids, I don't have enough energy to give to Kathy. So we have to make sure that we're with those right priorities. And frankly, that's going to make you a more effective, long-term ministry person, as Doug said.
When I was a teenager in Jim's youth group, there was, let's say, 5 significant couples. Jim and Kathy were one of them. Of those 5 significant couples from when I was a teenager, 4 of those couples, their marriage didn't last. And I remember when I was in college, I called up Jim one time and I said, Jim, if you break up with Kathy, I'm leaving the faith. Because even as a young leader, I was blown away at how these ministry leaders' marriage didn't last and how it just seemed incongruent with the faith that they were teaching. Jim has been faithful to his wife. He's had a long marriage, 38 years or something like that. But you do talk about a season of your life where you had an affair, not with another woman, not with another man, but with your work. How did you identify that? Because I think more people can relate to that.
Right. I had to admit to Kathy one time when she's kind of going, hey, what's up with this? I said, I'm having an affair. The affair was with my job. My mistress was my youth group. Actually, he was in that youth group. It was a youth group that these people loved me. And I loved my low self-esteem needs were met by the kids and by the parents who thought I was cool and all that stuff. So for Kathy and I, by me admitting that it was almost like an affair, this job, we came up with 3 things. One, we came up with the decision to have a non-negotiable date night. And I'll admit, in the middle of all of our youth ministry stuff, that wasn't a priority. And today, it is. I'd say we have a date 48 times out of 52. And that's not that we're all that special. We just did it. We didn't have money. We would go down and get coffee someplace. But that was a key. Secondly, we decided we would only be out 3 nights a week. And there's no magic number. I heard Doug say last night that he and his wife, Kathy, were out 2 nights a week at times. Some of you are out more, but you figure that out. We needed to be home more. Thirdly, is Kathy had veto power over my schedule. So the way we kind of worked with this affair was that instead of me now making all the decisions and Kathy getting mad at me or worried about my schedule, we scheduled together. We still do that. And we can grieve our schedule if we get too busy, but admit, if you have some brokenness in your marriage, admit it. If it's something like an affair, like I had to say in terms of the job, say it that way, and then begin to pick up the pieces, put a program together that works for your marriage.
Yeah. Jim, a lot of these people are so exhausted from youth ministry. It's so tiring. They go home and then they have to be on. They've got little kids. I can remember one time coming home from church and my kids were little and they said, your mom is trapped in the bathroom, and she was in the bathroom just hiding just to get away from them a little bit. There's so much pressure at church where everybody wants something from you. Parents want something from you. Kids want something. The senior pastor wants something. Expectations are huge. And then you go home and you are met with immediate expectations when you walk in the door. Can you give any practical ideas about what can you do by the time you leave the church office and you get home?
Well, a couple things. I think you leave the church office sometimes a little bit earlier, and I think you go into the church office a little bit earlier because we only have so much margin in our life. So if we spend it all before we get home, we aren't going to be any good at that. And yet at the same time, as you come home, I think you have to say, look, just like I was up for that senior pastor, I was up for the youth group or whatever, I need to be up for my family. And I realized that long after kids in my group are gone, or were gone, I'm not in youth ministry right now, but long after those kids were gone, I still had my family. And so I just felt that I had to make that tweak and, again, ask certain questions. And one of my questions was, is the work of God I'm doing destroying the work of God in me? Yeah. And I found that my heart was shrinking for God because I was so busy doing God work. And so, again, I found that what I had to do was just kind of stop. I didn't always do it perfect, but just kind of stop, kind of readjust and go, when I go home, I'm not going home just to make it about me. I'm going home to actually be a servant lover to my wife and to my kids.
That's good. You have written more books on marriage than most of us in here have read. And you actually have a devotional called Closer. And there's a lot of us in here that feel guilty that we don't have the types of marriages that, we wake up in the morning and say, good morning, spouse, let's have a quiet time together. And, a lot of us feel guilty, and then guys like you write books that make us feel more guilty. So, talk about Closer and the expectation with that and what you're thinking about. What does a spiritual marriage look like?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think probably the area of intimacy for those of us in youth ministry, maybe in the world, that's least developed is the area of spiritual intimacy. I could disciple kids all day long, but when it came to my relationship with Kathy, because sometimes we'd fight or because there's bitterness or because we were busy, we wouldn't do that. So what we did is we started trying to have a devotional every day. That sounds spiritual. And it worked for 4 days. Yeah, we bought a big, thick book. We went through it, and we were really impressed with ourselves. But then the 5th day, we lost the book. Or the 6th day, the kids got us too busy, or we were mad at each other, and then we didn't want to do devotional together. And we kept trying it, and we felt guilty. And one day, we were talking to a mentor. And I really suggest that you find men and women who are in ministry. A lot of times, if they're in ministry and they actually have an okay marriage, not a perfect marriage, but you kind of hang out with them. This couple said something that rocked my world. I said, we're struggling spiritually intimate stuff. We want to do that. And he goes, well, we spend 20 minutes a week. My first reaction was, a week? How wimpy is that? And then I went, well, we don't really even spend 20 minutes a week. So we made it, as we were driving home from there, we're having dinner with him. As we were driving home, Kathy looks at me kind of almost longingly and goes, hey, would you be willing to do that 20 minutes a week thing? And I kind of went, well, Guy, that sounds kind of wimpy. And she goes, well, let's try it. And you know what? That revolutionized having some time together that way. Every time we do that, it doesn't mean that it's all, I don't remember what I ate last Monday, but it nourished me for the day. But for Kathy and I, that became a change point for us, that we would connect to what we call closer, closer time. And sometimes it's heavy duty spiritual, other times it's not, but it did mean that we would pray together. It would mean that we'd focus on a scripture, we'd focus on a subject. And I would challenge some of you to that literally you just kind of go, look, we're going to start small, maybe it's 20 minutes a week, and go on. In that, I wrote a book called Closer with Kathy, and it's 52 devotions for 52 weeks. But in it, one of the chapters is on actually sexual intimacy, which now Doug gets excited because that's what he's totally into. Some of us are into spiritual intimacy. And in it,
hey, whatever works.
We have friends who wrote a book called The 5 Sex Needs of Couples. By the way, you probably should get that book. Okay. And the 4th sex need of a woman, is spiritual intimacy. Let me say that again. The 4th sex need of a woman in this study is spiritual intimacy. She craves it. Men, it's not even on your top 50, okay? But what a woman is saying is, I need to be emotionally and spiritually connected in terms of really wanting to have a good spiritual connection. So it all goes together. It's not just, okay, now this is our time of prayer, now this is our time of sex. It actually goes together, and so I want to encourage some of you to do that. Is it perfect? No. Will there be times when you're angry and you go through the devotions? Yeah, of course there is. But it's still a good discipline. I call this, there's pain in life. It's either the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The pain of discipline says you do it. The pain of regret says that, well, we never got around to it.
You know, we don't have much time left, but I want to ask one last question. There's a lot of us in here that have learned over the years to kind of put on a good show in front of other people, because people are expecting week after week that we're going to teach the Bible, that we know Jesus, that we've got a good family, we've got all this stuff. So some people kind of pretend a little bit. I know it's not a high percentage of people that are here or even watching on video, but what do you say to the couple who there's some real hurt and some real damage, and the trajectory of where they're headed right now is trouble if something doesn't happen? What do you say to that couple, to that maybe that one person that needs to do something in their marriage to make something happen?
It's a great question, and I think that it's the majority.
Oh,
when
really?
You said there's not anybody, you're kind of looking around. I honestly think there's a load of people who feel that way. I want to say, to put 2 words together: replenishing relationships. Way too many people in youth ministry don't have replenishing relationships. We have VDPs, very draining people all around us. But are you leaning into replenishing relationships on a regular basis? That would be peers and mentors. If you don't feel comfortable talking to people at your church, that's fine, don't. But find somebody who's a replenishing relationship that you can relate to. Secondly, you know, the Bible's really quite clear. Where there is no counsel, the people fall, but in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. And so if you're going through a rough spot, how ridiculous that we are, suggesting to other people, referring to kids, go get help, parents, go get help. But then we're too, arrogant not to go get the help? Or we're too prideful? So if it's an issue for you, find help. Get the counsel that you need. But I find that both that, when you're really stuck, but also I find, like, I'm in a group every Tuesday morning, and I'm a better husband and a better father because I meet with 4 other guys, there's 5 of us, every Tuesday, and we talk about life. Find those people. They're not going to come to you. A lot of times the people who are coming to you are more the very draining people. So go after people. Meet with them. Make that a part of your regular schedule to have replenishing relationships. I think you've done a really good job of that with kind of the people that are built around your life. And I think you're a better husband and a better father because you've done that too.
Well, and I'm a better father and husband because I had a great model. And that's one of the things that we ought to continue to find those people in our life who are further ahead and actually much older that we can look to who have done it right. And that's what a gift I have had in Jim. Airtime is up. Seth just mentioned resources. I don't have any. Jim has written a book called Closer Devotions. He's written a book called Create an Intimate Marriage. What's another marriage book that you
I've only written 2. You said I wrote
Well, you've written like 50 sex books. He's kind of a closet pervert. He writes on sex all the time. Just Google his, well, actually be careful if you Google his name because he's written a lot on sex. But he's got a lot of great resources. Also written a bunch of stuff on how to be a great parent as well. So thanks for what you're doing, not just in youth ministry, but what you're doing at home.
Thank you. God bless you.